Yeah, I'll just share my presentation. And before starting the presentation, I'll just like to add, this is a bit of an interactive presentation where I will be discussing with you guys. And whenever, if you have any concern, you can stop me then and there, and then we can discuss that concept and then move forward. And in between, I also have certain concepts or certain questions which I'm going to ask you guys. And if you respond, then I have a better understanding of what is going on, whether the concept is delivered or not, and then we can move forward. Yeah, with this, I'll start. I hope you have a good session. Yeah. Yeah. Hello. Is the screen visible to all? Shall I start?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So, introduction, the session has already specified. And as you were saying that this agenda, why this thinking clearly? Because when I was working better, I realized that whatever I was working upon would be really applied in the real life. And so the agenda for this is that why think clearly, why can't we think clearly, and how can we get better. So all of this content is actually it is not my original thinking. It is curated from certain people like Daniel Kahneman, who wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and the originator of theory of constraint management philosophy, Dr. Eli Goldratt, and Danny Early. These are some behavioral physicists who have understood and tried to understand the human psyche and human behavior, and why at certain stages we are not able to think clearly. Yeah. So, uh, to start with, I just want to quote one problem, one statement, quote from Albert Einstein, that if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about a problem and 5 minutes thinking about solution. And he also stated that it is not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with the problem longer. Because normally whenever we discuss, जब हम आपस में भी बात करते हैं, बहुत सारी ऐसी बार होता है कि वी आर बहुत जल्दी एक सॉल्यूशन पे पहुंच जाते हैं कि ये एक प्रॉब्लम है, ये एक सॉल्यूशन है ना. सो व्हेन इफ वी रीड द स्टेटमेंट फ्रॉम एल्बर्ट आइंस्टीन, ही इज सेइंग कि मैं तो एक्चुअली ज़्यादा टाइम एक्चुअली प्रॉब्लम को अंडरस्टैंड करने में लगाता हूँ, ताकि अगर प्रॉब्लम्स मेरे को सही में समझ में आ गई तो सॉल्यूशन तो उसका बहुत ही जल्दी निकल जाएगा, है ना. सो वाई ही सेइंग सो कि प्रॉब्लम को अंडरस्टैंड करना करना मुश्किल है, जब मुश्किल भी है और ज़्यादा समय लगता है. वाई वाई ही इज मेकिंग दिस स्टेटमेंट. सो अभी ये क्वेश्चन आ गया कि एल्बर्ट आइंस्टाइन, वाई एल्बर्ट आइंस्टाइन इज मेकिंग सच स्टेटमेंट कि ही नीड्स टू स्पेंड लॉट ऑफ टाइम थिंकिंग अबाउट अ प्रॉब्लम. एंड ऑल्सो व्हेन वी put this heading that we need to think clearly, why why for you, why should you why should you join this conversation that you have to think clearly? Because normally if a topic of this statement comes to your mind, normally the question would be, यार मैं तो ठीक ही सोच रहा हूँ ना, अभी मेरे को प्रॉब्लम क्या है मतलब. But why, that's why I'm putting this as a problem statement, because as a budding entrepreneur, you you guys need to identify a problem. So identify a real problem for which some customers are willing to pay for your solution. So if the problem is correct, then most likely you'll find certain customers who have that real need, and they'll be able to pay it you. That is why this skill set of that you are able to identify a problem is very critical. Yeah. So now, why can't we think clearly? Well, is there a problem? Are we not putting any effort, or is there a problem of your IQ? So let me tell on this slide is that this is not a problem. This is not a problem of IQ. It is not a problem of that you are not putting effort. Actually, there are certain problems which we can be attributed to human wiring, that which we say of there are two or three system of thinking, and how our natural thinking process alignment is there. We naturally think in inductive fashion. Secondly, there are certain human biases which affects our thinking process, and time to time it affects our decision making. Some of these are recency effect, commitment bias, consistency bias, anchoring bias. And one of the major part which affects our thinking is that we at times have a limitation in managing complex system, understanding and managing complex system. So just for clarification, there are two types of system. One is a linear kind of a system where a particular cause and effect is very clear, and there are some non-linear systems which we call as complex system, where a cause and effect are fuzzy. So, for if typically complex system you can say is field of economics or field of ecosystems, where there are multiple factor, it is very difficult to understand what is causing what. Yeah. So here, let's take all of these one by one and understand why I'm saying that there's a wiring, the way we are wired, and what kind of biases are coming, and how this limitation in managing complex system is there. Yeah. So there's a picture in front of your screen, and I want to ask you guys, what kind of emotion, what kind of understanding you get when you see this picture? What kind of emotion is being displayed by this lady on the picture? You can unmute yourself and share what do you think about the picture?
Confused.
It's a
Angry
angry
lady.
lady. Anyone else?
Confused.
Complaining about something.
Yeah. So you got the emotion. Okay. Next, what is the answer for this? You are seeing something 17 into 37. What is the answer for this question? Can someone unmute and share?
629.
Huh?
629.
629. Okay. So you typically see, I would just want to draw a comparison in these two things, that when you saw a picture, you on that moment understood that something this about this woman, she's seemingly angry, and for most of you that answer was obvious. You didn't have to think. It was automatically that you understood that that woman is angry, and she's either complaining something about something, but he's somewhere in anger. But when you saw this mathematical problem, actually the answer did not come to you immediately. So it was not that 629 came to you immediately in your mind whenever you saw the question. It did not happen. You have to actually think, and do the multiplication, and then come out with the answer. So I wanted to draw a parallel between the system 1 and system 2. So system is actually which happens on an automatic basis, and without you noticing, it's a automation at a subconscious level. For system 2 is something where you have to actually think and solve that problem. I hope this differentiation is clear with all. Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Shall I move away? If is there any question till now in the presentation? If anyone is having a question, I'll just want to take that question right now.
You can write your question in chat box also.
Yeah. Okay. So let me move ahead. There's one more question in front of you, in front of the screen. A bat and a ball cost $1.01. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much the ball cost? Can you please unmute and answer this question? What is the cost of a ball here? Hello.
$0.1.
$0.1. Anyone else? Hello.
$0.05.
Yeah. So most likely the very first response which come to many of you is $0.1. And obviously, as if you spend a few more seconds into solving this problem, you would realize that 0.1 is not the correct answer. 0.05 is the right answer. And on this point, what I want to say is that on some of the problems or things which we face in our daily life, our system 1 automatically generates a solution to it, and it doesn't get stopped by or get checked by system 2, and it is the answer which we give to that question. We saw in terms of problem and solution, we all see a problem and then we give a solution. But if we would have thought more, then we would understood actually whatever solution we are giving is not the right solution. 0.05 is the correct answer in this. And I'm sure you all of you have the IQ. If you put down and try to solve this problem, you will get the right answer. But whenever in the very first instance, what answer comes to your mind after reading this question is an incorrect question. So this is what happens. That system fast one is fast, it is unconscious, it is automatically, it helps us take everyday decision, but the problem is that it is error prone. No? The system 2 is slow. It is whenever we put up a conscious mind, we put up a conscious effort, and it helps in conscious complex decision making, and it is reliable. But the problem is that our automatic uh, system one is automatic. System two is something which we have to put in use. And the way humans are, we are designed to conserve energy, and more often than not, we don't use our system two faculties, and many of our decisions gets taken by system one, because of which we uh, tend to have many errors in the system. Yeah. So this automatic version of system one leads to many of errors in our daily life. When I say errors, it can be errors in understanding a situation, errors in terms of understanding the cause and effect of a situation, errors in terms of understanding what is the real question. Is that a real question or not? We might have certain errors in that. Yeah. Let's take one more thing. So now one more thing is that we humans are actually also designed in terms of inductive thinking, which is essentially generalization of a observed pattern. That you observe a pattern, you create a theory, and then you confirm by more observation. Let's take example to see how this inductive thinking works. So we'll do a small exercise. It's going to take 5 or 6 minutes. So what the exercise is that there's a sequence, there's a series which you can see. The series is 2, 4, 6, and there are certain numbers which can come after this series. What you need to do is you have to unmute yourself. You have to suggest the next number. Then I'll give you an answer, yes and no. And if the answer is yes, then you have to explain, or no, whatever. Based on my answer, you have to explain what is the rule of this series. Is this question clear to everyone? So there's a series 2, 4, 6. You have to suggest the next number. Then I'll be giving answer of yes and no. And based on my answer, you have to give me the rule behind the series. Yeah. So can anyone attempt? What is the next number in the series?
8.
Yes. Then you tell me the rule of the series.
Even numbers.
No. Anyone else would like to attempt?
Chirag has written 10.
Okay, 10. Yes.
Chirag, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, 2 plus 4 is 6, so 4 plus 6 is equal to 10. That's what my logic is.
So you said 10 is...
Yeah, it's the summation of
yes.
previous 2 digits. That's it.
No, the rule is no. This is not the rule.
Positive even natural numbers.
First of you tell what is the next number in the series. Then I'll say yes and no. And after that, you have to suggest what is the rule.
Yeah. 8 is the next.
Yes, 8 is the next number.
Then even natural numbers.
No. Anyone else would like to attempt this?
Eight is the answer.
Yes.
It's an arithmetic progression with difference 2 and starting with 2.
No, this is not the series. Anyone else? Yeah. So, so now what I want to highlight, this is not about the right or wrong answer. I'll give the right or wrong answer after a moment. The if you see the kind of process which you followed, the process which you followed, you observed a pattern, 2, 4, 6, and you created a theory. You created a theory. Suppose someone said it's an even number, so he created a theory that it's an even number. And then what did he do was he said, okay, it's an even number. Then the next predicted number is 8. So he then confirmed that number. Then I said, yes, it can be 8. But then I said the rule is no. So what was happening is naturally we were trying to, from the based on the observation, we were creating a theory, and we are creating a scenario where we are finding more observation, and then saying, okay, if 8 is the expected answer, and I have said yes, then okay, then my theory is confirmed. So this is the normal way we humans are designed, that we are creating a theory and then confirming. By the way, the answer for this series is that it is a series which is increasing numbers. Any number 2, 4, 6. It can be 7. It can be 8. It can be 9. It can be 10. It can be 12. Any number would have actually fit in this. It's a series of increasing numbers. Yeah, that's a rule. But I would like to highlight one part, that if someone naturally could have taken an approach that, okay, this is an observation and there's a theory, instead of confirmation, if someone thought, okay, let me just try to disprove my theory, rather than doing a inductive thinking, let me revert and not do a inductive thinking and do a deductive thinking, that I'm trying to disprove whatever is my theory. And then he or she might have asked, okay, if 8 is not a right answer, might have tried 7. Or if someone might answered, okay, 5 is the thing, then there's a chances that people might be able to find out what is the right answer in the shorter period of attempts. Is this clear? Hello. So naturally, I'm not saying that this is something wrong. That naturally we are designed in such fashion that we think inductively. Naturally, we are always operating in a mode where we are trying to confirm things, or rather trying to disprove things. And disproving thing is something which does not come naturally to any one of us. Hello. Any questions on this? Okay. Let me just move ahead. Shall I go ahead? Any questions, any comment?
You can move on. Why?
Yeah, okay. Now, next thing which affects our thinking processes, that there are certain biases which comes up. Now, there was an article in 2013 which was published that the rate of organ donation. So it was 100% reported in Austria, but only 12% in Germany, and 86% in Sweden, but only 4% in Denmark. Can anyone think of you any possible reason? And these are countries which are very similar demographics, similar government structure, and can be categorized into a developed countries. Why do you think this is such a huge difference and discrimination, a difference in terms of people willing to donate their organ or not? So, like 100% of people are willing to donate their organs in Austria, but with Germany, which is a neighboring country, only 12% are willing. So, what has changed? Is there something difference between these two countries? So the answer was very exceedingly simple. That whenever people actually were filling the form of their health insurance or healthcare, there in countries where there was a higher rate of donation, it was an opt-out form. That by default you are actually opted in, and by if you want to opt out, that you have to tick that, okay, I don't want to donate organ. But in Germany and Denmark, actually by default you are opt out, and you have to tick in if you want to donate your organs. So the difference was the way the question was framed to the people when they are filling their health cards. So this puts up a question that if we are actually prone to such kind of huge decisions, because donating an organ is such a huge decision. And still, what we did was people stuck to a status quo kind of a scenario wherever they were presented to for making a decision. Most people did not made a decision. They went up with whatever decisions is actually presented in front of them. So nowadays you can actually see these guys, these biases are actually getting utilized or understood and used by many organizations. Like whenever you go to like when you would try to book a ticket on Go, Ibibo and Make My Trip. So by design, your insurance, whatever travel insurance is actually opt-in. So if you don't want a travel insurance, then you have to untick it, and then you get some reduction in your ticket fare. So they have understood this process, that when a decision making is being presented, and we want to think and put in a effort to take that decision, most likely we will go to what is a default being presented, and that's a framing bias which affects us. Second is that anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is somewhere which is akin to that idea is to use the pre-existing data as a reference set for the subsequent data. I'll just give an example, my personal life example, what anchoring bias I faced. A few years back, I was searching a flat in Mumbai, and then I went to a broker that, boss, I need a flat in Mumbai. He said, okay, sir, I'll try to find you a suitable flat. Then he took me to a flat which was horrible, and it was exorbitantly expensive. He was saying, he was quoting some price. I said, boss, I would not like to live in a free in this flat, and you're saying this kind of a price. And then he took me to a flat which was okay looking and almost similar price, a bit expensive than the previous flat, but it was far better than the locality was good. The flat was okay. It was not very good flat, but the flat was okay. Then actually I settled for that flat. And later on, I have realized when I dig deeper that some of my friends actually have found out much better flats at a bit competitive rate, or a bit the rates which are paying. So then I actually understood what was done to me. That when he presented to me a very bad flat at a exorbitant prices, then actually it gave me a reference point for my next decision making. And then actually I read this article that these are many things which actually sales team deploy, that specifically in real estate agent, when they show to their clients that one of a flat which is moderately looking but very expensively priced, and then take into a next flat which is very good looking but at the same price, and they, in this way, they are able to get better rate for the products, for the flats. So this happens to all of us, that we use pre-existing data as a reference set for the subsequent data. Yeah. Then one more thing is social proof, that we observe whatever best practices accepted in the society without much of a critical thinking. And this is something which is very well used by many of the online shopping spaces, that they should, like the celebrity advertising or advertising in such fashion that this guy is using, that guy is using, then creating a scenario that this product is actually used by all. Then there are thousands of ratings of that product which is giving positive results and all. So these are the kind of social proof which when we get social proof, we actually lower our thinking, or we don't think too much when taking those decisions. So this is a bias which happens in the social factor. There are many other human biases. There are anchoring biases, there are self-serving biases, there are many other biases which affects our thinking. And am I saying these biases are wrong, or am I saying the system 1, system 2, system 1 thinking wrong? No, I'm not making that claim. What I'm trying to put forward is that they have been designed to serve a very specific purpose. When we as humans were in wild, and we were living in certain condition where we have to make a quick decision, we have to search for our survival, we have to wherever the conditions were pretty different. But now these tendencies which have remained in our thinking process are no longer fulfilling our decision making process, because no longer are we are living in wild, we are living under a survival thing. We are now taking certain decisions wherein those mental faculties of thinking fast or getting biased by these factors is no longer required. But these things are already there. So being aware is something which can help. Yeah. The third aspect which is limiting our thinking faculty is that humans, the way we are designed, have a very limitation in managing complex system. So, as we said that there's a complex system which is somewhere in economics, and ecosystems are excellent example of a complex system. So, how does this create a problem? Let me just take an example for you on this. So, I'll take example of Yellowstone National Park. So, this is a huge park which is spread over 2.2 million acres. This is a national park in USA. So what was happening in late 1800? What the population of the game, which is basically deers and other which hunter and gatherers are used to hunt, was going down. And what happened in the early 80s, 1800, this actually went down substantially. Then people started noticing that it is very difficult to go and hunt in the Yellowstone National Park because the population has really gone down. So during late 1800s, Theodore Roosevelt, who was a conservationist, and he was actually doing a lot of work for conserving of national parks, specifically Yellowstone National Park. He came up with the idea that he has to do something for the preservation of the national park. And it's a very noble idea. So what he did was, around 1880s, he called the U.S. Cavalry to help. So US cavalry set up, and then they observed, okay, the game population is going down. Then they said, okay, let us do something. They started giving special attention and food to the game population, and specifically elk. Elk was one of the kind of variety of a deer. If you the photograph is showing one of the elk. Yeah. So incidentally, when they started feeding in somewhere in late 1800, the population boom of elk happened in the subsequent year. But also there were certain unintentional effects which also surfaced. People started observing that certain essential flora were getting disturbed. For example, that these elves, when they started their population boom, they started eating a lot of flora, and one of them was aspen tree. And this aspen tree was something which they liked the leaves. They liked the leaf of those aspen trees, and aspen tree was somewhere. So the population of aspen tree went down, and aspen tree was used by beavers to construct the beaver dams. These are the dams which beavers used to construct to stop waters. So when the aspen tree went down, were not able to construct the beaver dam. The beaver population also went down, and the beaver dams thereby in the subsequent year also went down. And because of which the beaver dams were no longer there. Lot of water which was coming was not getting stopped by the beaver dam; it was flowing off. So a lot of water which was stopped to required for essentially growth of a lot of flora and fauna in that area actually was not there. So, and these were the cascading effect that it started happening. So there were a lot of disruptions which actually happened because of one single action, which was very well intended action which humans took for feeding elk. So this is the kind of thing which happened, that when the elk preservation started, their population boomed, and during late 90s, 19th, early 1900s. But also one more factor which happened is that there was a severe winter, and some disease also happened, and because of which the elk population actually went down, and there was almost 50% reduction, that there was almost 35,000, and it went down to 15 odd thousand. So what happened, that people wrongly attributed that, okay, these park managers, they said these predators are the reason because of which the population of elks is going down. So now they incidentally taken a decision that we have to kill these predators, and in early 1924 they killed the leopard, they killed the wolves, they killed the coyotes which were available in the national park. And there's a famous story called, around 1926, the last wolf was killed in the Yellowstone National Park, and it had its own ramification. A lot of problems also happened after this when the predators were killed. So there's a famous book called Playing Gods in Yellowstone, which is by Ashton Chase. He said that humans have been playing gods for 95 years, and everything they did seemed to make the park worse. In their attempts to manage this beautiful wide area, where each mistake the part made worse off, and no mistake could be corrected. And and at no point there was any ill intention of destroying something or creating a negative effect. So now what we are trying to present here is not a very negative picture. What I'm trying to present here is that by design, when there's a complex system in place and with a lot of cause and effect which are going on, humans have a limitation of understanding those systems and taking action even when whatever noble intention they have. Yeah. So now, so we have discussed three parts. Let me just re-summarize. We discussed that we have certain human wiring issues, which is like system one thinking, system two thinking. Then we also discussed that we have certain biases which affects our thinking, and we also discussed that we have a difficulty of managing complex systems. So now we have almost spent almost half an hour on discussing these problems, that how these problems are affected. Now, is there a way out? Can we do anything about it? So this is something should be very relevant to us. If there's a problem and this is affecting our approach of solving an issue, then we need to find out a structure or a system with which we can go out of it. Sorry, yeah. Is there any question at this point? Darshan sir, if you can check the chat box, is there a question at this point? Any student can unmute themselves and
Participants,
ask.
you can unmute yourself also and ask your question if you have.
Yeah. If there is no question, then I'll continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Then I'll continue. Yeah. So what can we do? So so what we can do is, one thing is that definitely we can make it slow. All those decisions which we take on a jiffy, if we start involving system two, for essentially which we need to think is that system two is somewhere which can help us go through the system one biases, system one errors. It can also help us overcome some certain biases. Then it can help. Then rather than taking a approach which is a confirmation kind of approach, we can take a counterintuitive approach, which is like a falsification approach. And rather than looking for evidences which proves us right, let's look for evidences which prove our hypothesis wrong, which will be uncomfortable for all of us because we don't want to get proven wrong. But if it's an approach which is very helpful, and these are the approach which scientists take to get breakthrough discoveries, and these are the approach I recommend to people who are in the startup world that they should take, rather than looking for evidences of your ideas that your ideas will work. Also took certain effort why your idea will not work. Actually, when you do that practice, why your idea or why your solution is not going to work, it gives a lot of insights. It gives a lot of factors which you should consider before taking your next step, and it makes your decision making very fast and effective. And also deductive reasoning rather than doing inductive reasoning where we are using generalization to specifics. We should where patterns to the generalization. What we should do is we should use generic facts and then logically crunch them together to achieve specific facts. Yeah. So I'll go a bit deeper on that. Yeah. So as I said, is everyone can see these two arrows. This is the Muller-Hélier illusion, and I am sure all of you are aware of this illusion. That are you seeing these two lines as equal, or which one is bigger, which one is smaller? Hello.
Below one is larger.
Yeah. So actually, in this is an illusion, if, where actually both lines are equal in size. But when we see these two lines, what we observe, as Sir has said, is that the below line seems to be a longer line because it is a fins which are pointed outwards, and the top line is which is fins which is pointed inwards. Now even after I've told you the truth, have your brain or have you visually started seeing the both line as equal? The answer is most likely no. You still see that the below line is equal is bigger and the above line is as smaller. Your mind is still trapped in the situation that you are always visually seeing this, even when you know this for a fact that both of these lines are equal. So same way, even when we get aware of the biases, either our system one of thinking or system two of thinking, or human biases, which we have discussed, just being aware actually does not protect us, because our mind, irrespective of getting the awareness, is going to work towards it. So now when we have this information that we are always going to fall prey of this, whatever we do, even if we are aware of the anchoring bias, it is going to affect us. Whatever we do, the social proof, it is going to affect us. Whatever we do, framing effect is something which is going to affect us. So being aware that you are always going to be vulnerable is actually, and having that acceptance, yes, I am going to get hit by these kind of problems because these problems are not going to go away. This is part of my biology and this is how I'm going to function. So that gives us a freedom to choose as well as work on a thinking process that we have to put in a great degree of effort so that we don't fall trapped in these biases. Second is that falsifying approach, that after forming a hypothesis, look for evidences which disprove the hypothesis. Yeah. So it happens to all of us that whenever we get an idea, we are excited about the idea, we go for looking for evidences which makes us our ideas right, which we talk to people which say yes, your idea is good, and we dislike criticism. Someone who's going to come and say your idea is not worth it, we are not. Most likely we are not going to engage in the conversation and say, boss, let's discuss why are you saying so. We are going to rub him off that you guys are negative, you guys always talk bad about me. Let me not go into that discussion. But this is something which is extremely important for people who are looking for startups, because uh, in startup world you are going to make certain hypothesis about a problem, certain hypothesis about a solution, why a solution is going to solve your problem. And if you're only looking for evidences this is going to prove your hypothesis, then there are chances that you might not cover the whole picture. You might not discover why your ideas are, what are the weaknesses of your ideas, what are the use cases where your ideas is not going to work, and what are the use cases where your idea is actually only partially solving the problem. So this is something which is difficult to practice, but yes, we if we become aware that whenever we are thinking about an idea, first thing about what should I ask myself is that why this idea will not work. What are the conditions under which this idea is going to get failed miserably? If we start asking these questions to ourselves, this actually will fasten our thinking process and we'll commit few mistakes in our life. Yeah. Then deductive reasoning is linked with falsification approach, that we use a generic fact and then logically manipulate it to reach to a specific fact. Just like algebra is an example of deductive thinking. Also, it is like if this, then this is something uh, which, if you take that approach, in most of your LR, logical reasoning is based upon deductive reasoning. है ना? And it never fails us. Deductive reasoning is very strong. So for an example, like we take example that men are mortal, it's a generic law about or a proposition, and John is a man, an instinct of a population, and hence John is mortal. So this we are drawing that if all men are mortal and John is a man, then hence John is mortal. So we are drawing a conclusion out of this. So deductive reasoning is actually very helpful. Again, this is very counterintuitive. We don't tend to go into a deductive reasoning. We always go into a inductive reasoning. Yeah. So the next question is, this is a bit of exercise. This is the last part of our discussion. We'll take 5 more minutes and then we'll be over for our questions. So what I want to ask you all of is that these are the 9 dots which you're seeing on your screen. and what you need to do is that you need to connect these dots with 4 straight lines, and while doing so you don't have to put up your pen, you don't have to lift your pen. So this is the question. I'll again repeat. I would expect all of you to just take out a pen and paper, draw these 9 dots, and try to draw, try to connect them with 4 straight lines without lifting your pen. And if anyone has already done this exercise, then I would ask them to not to share the solution right away. Let others attempt, and then we can move forward. So I'll just wait for 2 minutes for all of you to attempt this question, and then we can move forward. So anyone able to do that? You can unmute yourself now. We are anyway going to open up for question and answer. So you can unmute yourself and then you can share.
I think people are tired after examination.
Okay.
One person has done. Jay has done.
Okay. Jay, can you share your solution? You can take the presentation and you can share.
I can tell on mic.
Yeah.
Yes, Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, if we represent the dots as numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Row
Yeah.
first row is 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, 10, 7, 8, 9. Then we will connect in such a way 1, 4, 7. First line 1, 4, 7. Then
Okay.
we will go from 7 to 8, 6. 1, 4, 7. And then we will connect 8, 6. And then I will connect 3, 2, going through 1. And from 1, I will draw one line to 5 and 9.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Anyone else who have got the answer? Hello. Yeah. So what Jay has shared is the correct answer, but most of the people what are not able to solve that problem, and the reason of not solving the problem is a assumption which they make. So when I asked you this solving this problem, then most of the people, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. So the solution
Yes, sir.
which Jay said is something like this: that he's going to take this line 1, 4, 7, and then extend this line and take it to this line, and then form one more line like this, and then finally a line like this. So most people are not thinking. They have made the assumption that okay, they cannot go beyond the dots which are there, that they'll be always attempting a solution which is where thereby they are not able to go out of these lines. any solution if they try to attempt that, wherein they are not able to go out of these lines or these boundaries which is self-imposed. So what happens many times, uh, what stops many of us is that there's an assumption that there's a we which puts in a boundary condition for us to think in, and we don't challenge these assumptions. And these are the assumptions within which we are always thinking about the solution. For an example, let me take an easier example what I want to communicate now. So many of us make assumptions, make a statement like this: in order to get a job I must have a XYZ degree, because without degree these jobs are not there, and we make certain statements, and then what we are communicating to ourselves is that, boss, this is a necessary condition for us to get. So XYZ degree is a necessary condition to get a job. Without XYZ degree, I will not be able to get a good job, whatever I desire. And we make this statement in all our general life, and whenever we make this statement, what we are essentially doing is that we are putting a necessary condition. A necessary condition is like an assumption which we have for ourselves we have built. And the now question in front of us is that, is this boundary condition really valid? Like for the example which you have taken, collecting the four nodes, we were able to only solve the problem when we challenge that boundary condition. Okay, why can't we I go beyond the dots? Why can't I extend the line beyond the dots? And if Jay would have checked with me whether is there a condition that I can't extend the beyond the dots, I would have said no, there's no condition like that, and he then would have been able to solve that problem. Many of others who have failed and not able to solve this problem, there was an assumption which was lying there that this is a boundary condition. So now, like when we are approaching a problem and we are solving that, that we are using a approach of falsification, here also what we need to do is that whenever we are putting a necessary condition for anything, we need to ask ourselves that, is that a really true necessary condition? Are, how can we do that? It's a very simple thing. You just need to say, are there cases where people have got such a good job without this degree? If there are cases which are existing where people have, again we are using a falsification approach, we are trying to find evidences which falsifies this. Are there cases where which have such jobs without such degrees? Because you will find lot many peoples which are actually getting these jobs which after getting these degrees. So which is, if you look for confirmation, you're always going to get this confirmation, yes, he got this job because he had this XYZ degree. And the more and more you look for confirmation, the more and more you believe that, okay, this condition cannot work for me. But if you look for, you're challenging this assumption, challenging this boundary condition, and look for instances which invalidate your hypothesis, then you are a far better chances of reaching to the stage where you can solve that problem. Yeah. So that's it from all. I think we exceeded 5 minutes. Now we have 10 minutes for our question and answer. I open the forum. You can ask whatever
sure.
whatever you wanted to ask. I'll just stop presenting.
Yeah, if you have any query, you can unmute now. You can write in chat box also.
Yeah. I understand that this topic is somewhere a bit heavy, and you, if you don't have any question as of right now, also you can think about it and come back to me at a later stage, and you can search me on LinkedIn and connect me there. And if you have questions also there, then you can ask. If you have questions right now, I'm more than willing to answer those questions.
Yeah. One question is there from Anup. Sir, what is the difference between inductive and deductive reasoning?
Yeah. In inductive reasoning, what we are doing is we are observing certain pattern, which is like a localized state, and then we are forming a theory, and then we are trying to generalize that theory. Now, in the deductive reasoning, we are actually doing the opposite. We have a global rule, like we took an example that the all men's are mortal, which is a global rule, and then we are trying to identify a specific case, like John is man, and then from these two information, we are deriving one more information that John is mortal. The benefit of this kind of thinking is that if we observe that John is actually not mortal, then we can try to say that okay, any of the observation which is being recorded is actually not true. It is like if and if then type of thinking. I hope it is making clear. Any other question?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys can unmute yourself and ask. There's no need to type your question.
You can write in chat box. Hello, Mohit. I am audible.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're audible. Yeah.
If you give your email ID or LinkedIn profile, what you prefer to these guys, if they have any question later on or if they want to contact you later on, they can contact you. So if you prefer, please write it in the chat box
Okay,
so
I'll
they
share.
can take it there in the record.
I'll just share my LinkedIn also.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is there anyone have a question?